Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. It takes a lot of nerve, it takes a great deal of bravery to stand up after doing something that you utterly regret and admit in public that what you've done is wrong and that you do regret it and that you wished you hadn't done it. And to then use your story as a cautionary tale in the hope that others listen to you and don't make the same mistakes. There's two young people today giving their tale. They are regretting their transition from male to female and female to male. There is no going back for them. They are now sterile. Whatever happens, their lives are finished, really. They were preyed upon by the predators that are the trans lobby, who see every child who's not 100% certain of their sexuality as a trans child rather than just a confused child or a child who doesn't know its sexuality. They force them down a one-way street to a point of no return. The chemicals change their bodies forever. The surgery finishes the job. And the moment these people change their mind, they become the deadly enemies to the trans lobby, who then reject them, even though it is they that have caused their misery. Let's take a look at these two very brave young people who are speaking out and telling their story. I should never have done this. Transgender patients reveal their regret over NHS sex change operations and why they detransitioned after they were rushed into life-changing procedures. Richard and Amber tell in film that they both regret their treatment and claim they were rushed into it. Brave testimony will revive fears young people are being pushed into invasive and unalterable procedures. Richie said, "This is not reversible. The experiment is over for me. There really isn't any turning back." And yes, these children are being pushed into this. They are being pushed in by the Mermaids charity. They're being pushed in by the Portman Trust, the Portman and Tavistock Trust. They will not even see full psychiatric help. They sometimes don't even see a consultant. They are given the various chemicals they need to begin the process. They are pushed. Nobody knows what the problems underlying these children are. They're just simply saying, oh yes, that's them, and they are pushed down. And there are so many of them, and they utterly regret it. And in fact, a massively high proportion of children who transition, a massively high proportion regret it almost immediately. And the self-ending rate for these children is 90% higher than you'd think, than the background rate for this sort of thing. It is life-changing and often life-ending. But this is pushed by the trans lobby, who push at this all the time, because they say any doctor who doesn't immediately believe the child is an ist and a phobe, and doctors are becoming scared of these small but loud bunch of dangerous, mentally ill activists. Anyway, we're going to get into this. The two transgender patients today revealed their regrets at going through the operations and claimed they were rushed into life-changing procedures. In powerful testimony that will raise fresh fears that vulnerable young people are being pushed into invasive and unalterable surgery by zealous, mentally ill transgender activists, they spoke of the terrible impacts on their mental and physical health. After describing in graphic detail the nature of the surgery required to remove his male anatomy, 35-year-old Richie said, "This is not reversible. The experiment is over for me. There really isn't any turning back." This is Richie Herring. He has spoken out about this and given evidence. I think it was part of the Cass inquiry, where he hadn't even seen full, psychiatric evaluations, and he was more or less sort of pushed straight away down this road. He had no chance to draw breath, and ask the proper questions. Meanwhile, Amber, who had a mastectomy and took testosterone to transition from female to male, described the pain and health difficulties she experienced since being rushed into surgery, and said she had wished she'd been given therapy instead. No, they're not given therapy, because if you were to give therapy, the trans lobby will be going, oh, no, these people are trans, you shouldn't be giving them therapy, that's wrong, you're giving therapy to trans people, you should need to be trans, and that's how they work. And they push until actually giving someone psychiatric counselling and therapy is seen as a bad thing. And these doctors are scared of these dangerous trans lobbies. And I think we need to make the trans lobby on an equal par to peas. You know, look at the danger, look at the damage the trans lobby are doing to these children. They are targeting children. They should be regarded on the same level field as the likes of, you know, should we say, the peas who like very young children, you know, those. The people who make child phonographs. Again, clever, you've got to use the words here. The people who end children, child M's, you know. These people, the trans lobby, are no different from the other groups. We've got to start treating them like that. Or even, possibly, as a tourist, you know, threat. Again, having to use slightly incorrect words, but you know exactly what I mean. Anyway, their brave testimony in No Turning Back, a new film from Branded Film Studios, can be viewed in full on the media platform Iconic, in a rare example of detransitioners coming forward to reveal their regrets. It's rare that they come forward to reveal their regrets. It's not rare that there's detransitioners, and it's certainly not rare that there's regrets. When Mermaids, and we've done many videos on those, and Stonewall, and I've done videos on those, always talk about people who don't get the chance to transition. And at one point, before we go back, I will come back to this, Stonewall used to be for gay rights, gay and lesbian rights. But gay and lesbians have now got all those rights, and Stonewall realised they have zero reason to exist anymore. We're fighting for gay rights and we're fighting for lesbian rights, but they've got those rights. We don't exist. We're not relevant anymore. So they effectively heaved the gay and lesbian lot overboard and have become totally and exclusively a trans organisation. And they will not accept that they are mentally ill. They think that they have got the right to do this. They go around effectively a mafia-style operation of give us £100,000, I'll put a black on the wall, or we'll tell people that you're an and a phobe. You know, it's a criminal organisation, and that's who Stonewall are. Mermaids, don't even get me started. Well, at the end of this video, I will put up, or I'll put down here and here, 2 links. To one to Mermaids, one to Stonewall, because they are just awful organisations. Anyway, when Mermaids and Stonewall always talk about the people who don't get a chance to transition, they don't talk about the people who regret the process of transitioning. Well, of course not, because that would go against every single fibre of their being. You can't sit there and go, oh, you must transition, and then go, well, let's talk about the ones that we've pushed down a one-way street, sterilised these children, mutilated these children, and now they regret it. But they only went down that street because we pushed them. Well, that isn't going to go and sit well with these two mad these dangerous organisations, Mermaids and Stonewall. Filmmaker Charlotte Fantelli told the Mail Online she was referring to the 2 charities who have faced scrutiny on their stance on transgender issues. Both of these groups need to have that charitable status removed, especially when you see the people that Mermaids are hiring. And there is no, that's not that's Amber. So anyway, as we come up here now, this is I'm just saying. Sorry, there's Richie and Amber. I'm trying to get them in behind me on my picture. So that's Richie on the left, Amber on the right. They've detransitioned, so they've gone back. In his case, back to male. In her case, back to female. We come up. So Richie, who's a civil servant from the north of England, detransitioned after spending nearly a decade as a trans woman. After feeling different as a young boy, he discovered gender dysphoria while browsing online forums in his early 20s. And when he explained his feelings to other forum users, he was told he was 100% trans and should act on it. These are people in a forum. These aren't medical people. These aren't psychologists. These are people who with, let's say, a vested interest in increasing their numbers. So in March 2014, Richie drove to a private clinic in Scotland, where just after 3 appointments in 2 days, he obtained a diagnosis which would allow him to be prescribed cross-sex hormones on the NHS, and then he went on to an NHS gender clinic in Brighton. The first question I was asked when I saw the psychiatrist was whether I wanted gender reassignment surgery. The very first question asked by a psychiatrist. A psychiatrist paid for and working in a gender reassignment, setting, a gender reassignment clinic. Not an independent psychiatrist, not someone trained to do an independent verification. No. Someone paid by the clinic to ensure that they get the throughput because they need the money. I said to her, I'm not sure. I'd like some time, and I heard you could have therapy. But I felt they communicated to me that they weren't a mental health service. They were there to help people medically transition. In other words, yeah, you could have mental therapy. We're not going to do it. We're not making money out of that. We need you to get through there and let us cut your ghoulies off. They wanted me to have surgery more than I wanted to have surgery. It was really bizarre. No, it's not bizarre. They make money out of it, and they are basically pushed by this trans lobby. This whole trans lobby has set this whole thing in motion, and it's the trans lobby's job to keep the kids coming in through the sausage factory. No pun intended. I refused it in 2015, I refused it in 2016, and then in 2017 the psychiatrist said to me, you're established on your hormones. If you don't want surgery, we'll discharge you. But I was in the middle of that critical therapy, which was the anchor I needed in the world to keep me well. Then they told me I'd be discharged if I didn't go on his list. So basically, you were pushed into it by a professional who, instead of caring for you mentally as his job, has said, no. If you don't go through with this, you're off the list. You're done. You're on your own. Well, that isn't medicine. That is what you get from hackery. That is quackery and hackery. That should be illegal. Richie described the surgery he went through to transition from male to female as extremely brutal. The first thing they do is give you what's called an orchidectomy to remove your testicles. Once they've done that, they essentially shave the skin off the penis for that to be removed, and then they start removing the erectile tissue. If you imagine your knuckle losing your finger and you still have the knuckle, you can still twinge it. So unfortunately, you still have that phantom sensation. What they also do is re-angle the urethra, which is a very common complication called urethral constriction. And that's when you can't pass urine properly. It will either come up slowly or painfully, or in some cases, not at all. Some people have got catheters for the rest of their lives. Some have got really horrific complications. And the reason for that is that you are taking a body that is not female and you are moulding it and turning it and bending it to try and become female. And in doing so, you're removing all the musculature, all the nerve systems, all the connective tissue, and you're losing all the control. And you're turning a man into a man who cannot control his own urine. You are not turning him into a woman, because no matter what you do, you cannot turn a man into a woman. You can only mutilate a man. He said, as for me, I lost a lot of blood in surgery because they drill right through your pelvis. The infections that you get are just treated like it's a normal thing. They were like, you just get infections. Richie said he struggled mentally after surgery. Even if you're happy with it, it's tough. You lose energy. You become extremely fatigued and vulnerable in a way you recognise, and you don't have that power in a sense. It's a very strange feeling. I was still involved in therapy at the gender clinic, and I said, I think I've effed up here. I think I've made a really bad decision. Their response was, you've just had this really major surgery. This is rumination. This is just your OCD. No. This is a man who was forced, pressurised, cajoled into doing a surgery that basically he didn't want. And had he had independent psychiatric help, that would have been pointed out by any normal psychiatrist, anyone who did not have a vested financial interest in this surgery would have said, no, you don't need it. You're not, gender dysphoric. You're possibly just gay. That could be it. Or whatever other reason it would be. Anyway, he continues. So I would go back every month, and at every session I would say, I feel the same. This is mental. I should have never done this. He had instant regret. Almost immediately from coming round, he had regrets. Richie, who has since really transitioned to a man, added, "It's not reversible, the experiment is over." Amber, who is in her early 30s, works in recruitment and lives in the northwest of England with her wife, also bravely came forward to give her testimony on no turning back. She also first went to a private gender clinic where after just 2 appointments, she was diagnosed with gender dysphoria and received cross-sex hormones. She then had surgery to remove her breasts on the NHS. After 3 years on testosterone, she said she began to question her decision, but found the medics at her private clinic were not supportive. Of course not. You're paying them. The moment you have a problem with that, they're going, "Oh my God, we don't want to know. We just want your money. We don't care about you. You've been told to come here by the trans lobby. We are paid effectively a lot of money by the trans lobby because that's what we do. Money. Not healthcare, not mental health, not physical health. No, the only health we're concerned with is our financial health." She told the film, "It didn't stem from a questioning of my identity at the time. What happened was I started to experience a phenomena that does happen to a lot of people who have a transition. That's transmasculine, where the testosterone therapy causes issues for their internal body functions from a female lens. So my female reproductive organs started to have some issues. I haven't had any menstrual experiences since the onset of testosterone, and at the point where I got to about 2.5 years on testosterone, I started to experience a lot of severe pain in my genital region. I think I regret the speed at which I approached transition, especially the medical side. I don't think seeking diagnosis was necessarily an issue, and I did experience gender dysphoria. But the rush to have surgical intervention and to have the hormones is definitely something I wish I'd taken more time over." She's pushed into this. "I wish," she continued, "I'd explored in therapy the feelings I was having. So even if I had taken those medical steps, I'd at least have laid some groundwork to know I may not regret them, and I might feel more confident rather than rushing in as if it would solve all my problems. The thing is, it doesn't solve your problems. Your problems are not physical. Your problems are mental, and surgery cannot cure a mental problem." Describing the permanent effects of having taken male sex hormones, Amber said, "I have facial and body hair. Female hormones do not remove the hair that we've grown on testosterone, and I've got genital changes that are permanent. And of course, I've had a double mastectomy. What was there was causing the predominant bulk of my dysphoria in the beginning, and I do still have mixed feelings on my flat chest, whether I'm in some ways appreciative of the neutrality it gives me, and I feel I'm less sexualized. But trying to avoid what was difficult about going through the surgery in some ways, I've denied myself of the opportunity to embrace my womanhood fully." You never had a chance at womanhood, and that's the sad thing. You did this at such a young age. You were not given the correct advice. You were not given the correct, should we say, psychiatric help or therapeutic help, and you were pushed down this pathway, and this is what's happening. Filmmaker Charlotte Fantelli told the Mail Online she'd never covered trans issues before, but decided to follow her own personal experiences. She said, "When I was growing up, I had a few trials and tribulations when I felt the adults around me didn't protect me. I've always had a passion for helping children, and I've been interested in mental health, and have been published on the curriculum about topics to do with mental health for children. My children were age 11 or 12 when they came home after a sex education session in which they talked about transgender ideology and how they could potentially have been born into the wrong body. I questioned why a group of prepubescent teenagers would be taught that kind of ideology. There's no reason, in fact, there's no reason whatsoever. It's the fact that the government were too scared to ban it for the same reason, the Islamophobes, the name calling and that. And in fact, they should actually ban this sort of thing from schools because it is not appropriate, because the number of children actually gender dysphoric is so amazingly slow. It's so amazingly low. Because the number of children with gender dysphoria is actually so amazingly low. It is like not even 1% of 1% of 1%. In the whole country of 65 million people, there might be as many as 200 to 300 in total who are, truly 100% gender dysphoric. Everyone else, it's other issues, but they're being pushed down this line. She added, children should be allowed to explore their own identities in an innocent way, but what I thought was wrong was adults starting to label children at a very vulnerable place in their life and put seeds in their minds that came from a very adult, sexualised and gender-oriented place. And that is the problem. And it's the people who put this into the minds of children. They are groomers. They are peas themselves. They are threats to children. And we must treat them exactly as such. She carried on. What anyone wants to choose as an adult is absolutely up to them. My issue is if you're presenting with mental health problems, you should start by receiving therapy rather than push down the medical pathway. And that's what I have been saying ever since day one of this channel. And then it's just telling you about the film and when it's going to come out. And it's saying here that Mermaids has insisted it's the victim of a smear campaign and claims it's been forced to close its contact centre after being bombarded with abuse. Let me tell you something about this smear campaign. It was Mermaids who hired the P, and it was Mermaids who hired the other weirdo who likes to self-identify as a schoolgirl. So he's probably a P as well. So it's not really a smear campaign when they're hiring people like that. But anyway, I'll finish there. I'll come up and we'll round off. Now, I apologise for the length of this particular video. It did go on quite some time, but I felt I didn't want to cut anything that these two young people said, and I think that we should, give them the full chance to get everything they say out there. So I did go with the full text of the piece, simply for that reason. They deserve that for their bravery. So if you managed to get to the end, thank you very much for listening, and I'll call it quits and end there. If you like what you hear and see on the channel, please hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Ring the bell for notifications of future output. Leave a like, leave a comment, please share the video, and until next time, stay safe, stay well, always go the psychological route before you go the physical route, and goodbye.